on this new monthly series that I'm starting. It's called Beyond the Cards Monthly Mystics. And I'm going to be interviewing some of the best and brightest minds in the tarot world, the Lenormand world, the astrology world. And as my first guest, I am so incredibly honored to have one of my dearest friends who I met forever and a day ago, the tarot lady, Theresa Reed. Welcome, Theresa.
Hey, Elliot, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm so excited to talk to you. Any excuse to hang out with you, is always a good excuse.
Well, I just want to let everybody know how long we've known each other. I actually did the math today, and we met in 1996 when I was just a 16-year-old tarot reader at this little tea house. And in walks this mystical lady with this long jet black hair. And I'm thinking, who is this cool lady? And you got a reading from me, and I didn't even know you read cards at the time. But I was just like, oh my god, this lady's so cool. Was she a Scorpio or something? I mean, I thought you were a Scorpio for some reason. And then, we sat down and boy, did we connect. I just had such a great time meeting you then. But that's like 28 years ago. I just can't believe how
Mhm.
time flies.
And you don't look a day over like 16, 18. You still have that youthful glow. And the
It's
thing
the
is, I
lighting.
I re I remember back in the day, what happened is somebody said to me, "There's this really young reader, you gotta check him out." And he's down at this tea room, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm always, like, down for a good reading." And so I remember going in there, the shop was really cool, and you were in that back with that little there was, like, a little curtain, and if I remember correctly, you used, like, an herbal tarot deck. And it was such a great reading,
Oh,
and I just loved your energy, and, I knew we were gonna be friends right away.
well, and little what I know, after you left, someone said, that's Theresa Reed. She reads tarot cards. And I said, well, thank God I didn't know when she sat down that she was a tarot reader. I don't think I'd get it out. But, who would have seen what a big deal you became? I mean, you
Oh
are
god.
such a prolific author. You've written so many books. I'm fangirling you a little bit, but we got the tarot coloring book, your first book. And then we had, uh, this lovely tarot book, No Questions Asked, which is huge. But I also wanted to talk about your newest tarot book, which is The
Yes.
Cards You're Dealt: How to Deal When Life Gets Real. And this really tackles some of the toughest things that tarot readers get asked about. A lot of times when we are tarot readers, we're reading for people who are going through a struggle or a
Yeah.
challenge. So I just wanted to ask you about that book. What compelled you to write it? And what was your inspiration?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I mean, partly what you already said is why I wrote the book. Tarot readers are not always asked we're not always dealing with, like, romance. People think that all we're talking about is love, 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 romance, romance,
Mm,
and we do talk about relationships a lot, but a lot of heavy stuff comes to the tarot table. So
mhm,
part of the reason why I wanted to write this book is twofold. One, I've gone through some ish in my life, and every time I've gone through something like a big loss or heavy grief, I always turn to tarot to guide
mm,
me through it. So for personal things, the book was, okay, this is what I've been doing for myself with tarot as I've navigated life, but also a lot of it is the stuff I've used with clients,
mhm.
students to help them again deal with the hard things in life because people come to tarot readings often because they're in trouble and they need a good ear and a different perspective and some spiritual support as they move through those hard things. And tarot is my always my go-to tool.
Yes. Oh, that's so brilliant. Cindy asks, "Is Elliot in Milwaukee too?" Yes, I am in Milwaukee. Thank you, Cindy, for coming. And that's actually where Teresa and I met. It's weird that Milwaukee would produce two tarot readers like that. But
Mm.
back to what you were saying, you're absolutely right. I think that people really do come to tarot for that different perspective, and that led me to really want to ask you about your process. It's so weird because I've known you for so long,
Mhm.
but I've never really asked you, what is your process when you're starting a reading? How much of your tarot reading is memorized card meanings? How much is
Mm.
intuition? What do you start your process with for our listeners who also kind of want to know how to approach their tarot practice?
That's a very big question, actually. So for me, I mean, I've got a good solid foundation in the tarot card meanings. And, that's something I think every reader does need to do because I like to say that when you have a solid foundation in the traditional meanings,
Mhm,
you're you've got it like a springboard, so that way your
mhm,
intuition then can kick in and do its
mhm.
job. So I look at tarot as like a tool to tapping into the intuition. And so when I do a reading, the way that I work is I will like lay the cards out. Let's say someone asks a question, I lay them out and maybe I'll pull 3 cards, a spread or whatever. And the first thing I do is I will look at what is going on, and then this is gonna sound very weird to people who don't read intuitively, and then suddenly the information comes in like a ticker tape. And that's why I
Mm,
talk really fast when I do a reading, because it just comes in, it's like it's almost like automatic writing. And the
yes.
reason why it is like that, people have to understand, first of all, I grew up in a very psychic household. I'm very comfortable in that realm, and I've been doing it a long, long time, so it really is like an automatic process. Back in the day when I before the internet and all that stuff, people would come in, I wouldn't ask them their name or anything, just, whatever, we sit down and do it. So it was really going pure psychic stuff.
Yeah.
However, I found that those readings weren't always the best way to do readings. I like it when I have a focal point, when I know what the hell somebody wants me to focus on. So I'm not like pulling things out of thin air. I want to make
Mhm,
sure they're getting useful information. So, what do you want to ask about? Now, I don't read for the public anymore, but when I was before I quit doing readings, I would always ask people, okay, what is it? Here, fill out the questionnaire. What do you want to know? Because I don't want to waste my time.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes, we do kind of go in blind. And also, people just have different expectations for what a tarot reader can just pick up out of the air.
Yes.
And when we're just jumping in cold, it can be rather difficult sometimes. And sometimes the stuff we're going to pick up on blindly isn't
Yep.
necessarily what that person wants to hear about. So I love your idea of having a questionnaire where people
Yep.
kind of fill out, okay, this is really what I want to focus this reading on, because they're also spending money, and they really want to get the answers for the time they're paying for.
Yep.
So I think that's just wonderful.
Well, here's the thing, it's very impressive for folks to have somebody sit down and do a general outlook reading because they're very hard to do.
Hmm.
And I'm one of the few readers I know who does that. That's real old school tarot. And, so it can be very impressive when all of a sudden you are pulling these weird things out of thin air. However, it's not always, again, useful. Now, I find when I go to a reader, I'm going to tell them straight up, listen, this is what I want to focus on, because I will tell you, Elliot, if I don't, they always wanna give me a love reading. It's like, I'm
Oh
not
no.
lovelorn, I don't care about my love life's fine, I never think about it, I don't like, this is not what I want, and so I'm always very specific about what I want, and that way then I walk away with useful information. So I
Mhm.
will always tell the reader, "Let's focus here." Not that I'm trying to micromanage it, but to make sure that I walk away with what I need. I'll never
Yes.
forget one time I went to get a reading from someone, I don't remember who the hell it was either, but, I went in and I had a great time, and then after I left, I'm like, "Ah, son of a gun, I forgot to ask the one thing I wanted to know." And so that's why, again, it's good to be prepared. Cindy
Hmm.
asked, "Did it always come in like that for you?" Yes. So it's
Hmm.
always been like that for me, Cindy. It got stronger though as the more confident and the longer I've read. But for me, my process was always very, very intuitive. It's like do do do, and the information comes again super, super fast.
I agree with you on that process too. I found that as well. And even people who see my weekly readings or whatever, it's very similar with one-on-one
Mhm.
readings. I just kind of let my mouth run, and I'm not even really thinking about what I'm saying, and then it just all comes out, and I don't even know what I'm saying, but the person who's listening is making their connections, and kind of knows it. And I don't know if this is the same for you, but is it difficult if you're kind of in that flow and people are interrupting you and you have to stop and start and stop and start again? Yeah.
I don't like that. When I'm, like, rolling along, especially for a general outlook, when it's a general outlook, I do not want an interruption. I want to
Mhm.
let that part flow, and so
Mhm.
it can, like, throw me off, and I'm easily distracted anyways. It's like, "Oh, look, a squirrel." So it's like, once I'm in the zone, let me do that thing. When I do my Instagram lives and I'm doing these readings, sometimes people will be in there asking questions, and I'm like, "You're kind of interrupting my flow. Let me
Mhm.
do my thing." And it live streams are hard because of that.
Yes, definitely.
And
And
one thing I will
oh,
say real quick though, phone readings were always my favorite because I
mm,
didn't have that distraction. I found when I did phone readings for people, they would usually be more quiet and they'd be really listening. They were more intentional. Whereas if I had people coming in person, they always wanted to talk or interject and that was something that was very distracting. And I wanted to be able to focus and phone readings were my jam.
mhm. The 11 Priestess asks, what is a good way to connect deeper with your intuition? What would you suggest?
Well, first of all, for some folks, we just trust it, because first of all, that's again, I grew up in a psychic household,
Mhm.
and also I grew up in a household that was very volatile. And a lot of times when people grow up in volatile households, they have to be intuitive to kind of figure out what the mood of the household is. So I'm always like paying attention. I pay attention to how I feel. I pay attention to other people, how they're feeling, what vibe they're emanating. I pay
Mm,
attention to weird little things that I call signs. I think everything is a sign. So you got
mhm,
to start by really bringing a lot of awareness into the now. Pay attention. And oftentimes what happens is, we sleepwalk through life and we wonder, how did I get here? And it's like, well, wait a minute. If you've been paying attention all along, you've been seeing the signs, you've been feeling things, and you're more aware. So the best thing you can do is start paying attention. Now,
mm.
because I'm a writer, writers are also very much we are observing things all the time, and we're always paying attention. That's the first step to really developing your intuition. You just got to start really paying attention to everything around you. Get off your phone, feel what you're feeling, and honor those feelings. Don't think, "Oh my god, I'm being rude if I'm feel" No, no, no. Why are you feeling that? Really question it and don't ignore it. Don't stuff it down.
Yes. I want to say hi to Jody too. Thanks for the hello. And also, Teresa, I just wanted to know because you're not just a tarot reader, you've written so many books about tarot, but you're also an astrologer.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know, how does astrology play into your daily life? And does it complement tarot? Is it kind of different from tarot? Is there just something completely different with your process with both things? Do you keep them separate? Do you combine them?
That's another really great question. So I was an astrologer before a tarot reader. I got into astrology when I was in high school, and because a girlfriend's mother read my chart, and I was utterly fascinated. I'm like, "Oh my god, this makes so much sense." And astrology then was my gateway to tarot because I was at the old Walden books. Those don't even exist anymore. And I was at one of these Walden bookstores looking for astrology books, and I saw a tarot deck, and I ended up grabbing that tarot deck, and then suddenly I'm learning both at the same time. So I'm kind of ambidextrous. I'm fluent in tarot and I'm fluent in astrology because I started off with both of them when
Mhm,
I was 15 years old. And
mhm,
so, I've been doing it a long time. I mean, this is over 40 years. So for me, astrology, here's how I would probably say it. Astrology works really great with the analytical side of my mind.
mm,
I'm very, very analytical. My brain is always going. I've got 6 planets ruled by Mercury in my chart, no surprise. So it really satisfies that analytical side. And then tarot for me is more about satisfying the intuitive side. So I'm using both sides of my brain. And the way I work with them, I use astrology every day in my life. And that may sound completely bananas, but I use astrology every single day of my life. I check the planets. I want to know where the moon is. I want to know what's hitting me. I want to pay attention to the cosmic weather so I know, okay, today is going to be challenging. Maybe I'm going to
mm.
pipe down today, or today looks really good for this activity. Let me put my energy there. So I'm going with the flow of life. However, however, the best laid plans of mice and men oft go awry. So astrology is not fool safe. You can still see something that's coming astrologically and you can get a surprise. So I found the way I like to describe it is astrology is like this GPS. Okay, and it's going to help me navigate things. It's going to help me let me know what the flow of traffic is. But tarot is the thing that's gonna show me all the detours if I don't like the way the traffic's flowing. So if there's a big problem in my life, I'm not looking at astrology, I go, boom, right to tarot. Tarot is down and dirty, and it gets right to the answer. It cuts like a knife. So
Wow.
again, it satisfies both sides of my brain. The intuitive side says tarot. The analytical side says astrology. And do
Mhm.
I use them together? When I would read for the public, I would always start out general outlook. Now let's look at your planets. And now let's do more cards, questions. And then if someone wanted to know something about timing, which I'm really into timing, I would use the astrology for timing. And the other thing that I do, which is completely, again, sounds kind of like weird, I've used astrology for my business for many years. Many years. One day I remember thinking, wonder if I started following this stuff for business, how that would work. Let me tell you something. When I started getting serious about my business astrology, that's when things really worked well for my business. I went through all
Wow.
these terrible economies, really bizarre things, awful things happening in the world, pivots in my career, but it's always worked out. Partly because I'm a good businesswoman, but also astrology. It's my secret sauce for business.
Gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was wondering about what you did for your business. Because, like I said, we met each other in the 90s when I was just a
Hmm.
young kid. And, I opened up my own tarot shop and we would do events together. We would do like big parties for universities or
Yep.
country clubs or things like that, with the great Mary Ellen Pride in
Love
Milwaukee.
Mary Ellen.
Me too. She's just a legend. She'd win Best Reader in Shepherd Express every month. But I went to music school. I closed my shop in 2005. I kind of left the scene, and I didn't really touch tarot except for some clients. I would come back to Milwaukee and read them. When I was away from music school. But boy, when I got out of music school, I came back and I just looked at you and thought, what the heck has this lady been doing? Here she's writing books.
Astrology.
Oh my God. I was wondering, like, what was that? How did you, just blow up like that? So it was
Astrology.
astrology. Wow.
Following the stars. Really, and I mean, again, to anybody who thinks that stuff is cockamamie, I do the AstroBiz Digest. It's a little product I offer for fellow entrepreneurs. And then some people feel, oh, this is too overwhelming. I can't do it. But if you really, really follow that stuff and you can cherry pick the things you want to work with, it works. It
Hmm.
works. It has I mean, I always pay attention to trends, and right now I'm about to do another big pivot, and that's
Ooh.
happening very soon. Why? Because the stars favor it, and so
Will
I'm
you
I'm
whet
not
our
ignoring it.
appetite a little bit and tell us what that is or give a
Nope,
clue? Not yet.
nope,
Okay.
it's not ready yet. It's not done baking, let's put it that way.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm so excited to find out what that's going to be. I hope you let us all know.
Absolutely. Soon.
uh, yes. Also, I just kind of wanted you to give some advice to tarot readers who maybe been working with the cards for a long time, but they're thinking of going pro.
Mm.
What is the first bit of advice you'd give them?
Well, first of all, the one thing I will say is the world needs plenty of tarot readers. Some of us
Mhm.
are retiring. We're getting old. Although I think Mary Ellen's probably gonna be going till the end of time. I just love her so much.
Yes.
Y'all, if you're in Milwaukee, you gotta get a reading from Mary Ellen Pride. She
Yes,
is
you do.
so awesome. She's
Yes.
hilarious. And
Yes.
I mean, I just really, really love her work. But a lot of people we're retiring. We have an aging market. So if you are coming in new, especially those young readers, I always welcome them. We're ready to pass the baton to you. Come in, come in, come in. Now, thank you, Luna, for
Mhm.
young or for any reader. If you're new and coming in and wanting to go pro, treat your business like a business. Treat your business like a business. I see
Wow.
too many people half-assing it, or they don't
Mhm.
charge enough. They're not charging a living wage. They have weird hours, nothing set in stone. They don't have a website. You can set up websites now very easily, very cheaply.
Mhm.
So they're doing it really half-assed. And I will watch those readers and I will always sit back and say, they're not going to make it. And they never do. They
Mhm.
never do, or even if they make it, okay, make it, I'm gonna use quotation marks, they never really make a living at it because they don't
Mhm.
treat it like a business. I'm incredibly businesslike, and that's because I have an intersected Capricorn in my 3rd house, little astrology things for you. So I'm very, very businesslike, which makes some people also not like me, but I'm like, if it's gonna be a business and this is supposed to, like, pay my bills, then it better be run like a business. So
Sure.
again, it doesn't have to be elaborate. You don't even have to have an office. You can do it over the phone, but get a website, treat it like a professional business, have regular hours. Make sure you have a way for people to pay you, and for the love of all things holy, charge enough.
Hmm.
Charge a living wage.
Yeah.
Too many people undercharge, and then they can't pay their bills. That's not good. This is a
And it can be
skilled
very
profession.
draining. Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing I'd probably add. Work on your boundaries immediately. That's something I had to learn the hard way, Elliot. I did not have good I have terrible boundaries. Let's just be frank. And people with terrible boundaries are wonderful tarot readers because we have leaky boundaries, but we end up getting in a lot of trouble with people. I mean, you do have to have leaky boundaries in order to be really like tuned into someone psychically. I mean, and I'm not telling everybody to weaken your boundaries. No, don't. But naturally psychic people tend to have those weak boundaries. And the problem is, though, it gets you in so much trouble. It will make you miserable in your business. And there were
Hmm.
so many times when I was reading for the public, people were mean, they were rude, they didn't respect my time, and I put up with a lot of things I shouldn't have put up with. And I had
Hmm.
to learn boundaries the hard way. So the other pro tip I'm going to give y'all, learn boundaries. And one more pro tip, if you're gonna go pro, take business classes. I'm dead serious about that. I take business classes all the time. I'm a nerd, I love to learn, but I cannot believe how many people they don't wanna take it. It's like, "Oh, it's boring." I'm like, "What? I just took a class on contracts." Why? Because I'm nosy and I want to make
Hmm.
sure that I'm going to be the best at my business and that I'm not going to make stupid maneuvers if I sign a damn contract. So, business classes are essential.
Hmm.
Take them whenever you can. There's lots of free classes online that you can find. It will make you better at your work. Take it seriously.
Oh, I just love that. And, it is kind of a very, taxing, intensive sort of business. You're really plugged into other people. What's your process for recharging your batteries or keeping a boundary there for your energy so you're not completely wiped out? Because, even full disclosure, after a full day of readings for me, my gosh, I can get so tired and I'm just like a zombie for the next hour. What
Mhm.
did you do when you were reading for the public to kind of preserve your energy?
Well, first of all, I learned the hard way.
Mhm.
One thing I really did learn the hard way. I used to do, like, for example, parties. And parties were not appropriate for me. I'm introverted. Even though I'm friendly and people assume I'm an extrovert, I'm very introverted. Parties were hard for me. I would come home, I would be depressed. I would be
Mm,
so depressed. And the reason why, what I didn't realize is not just that I was introverted, but I was getting all of my energy depleted.
mm,
And so I would just come home and I would just be like, I can't talk to anyone for 3 days. It would take me 3 days to recover from a party. Not kidding. I
yes.
stopped doing the parties. That was a very good move for me. But what I would do, and I was a high volume reader when I saw people in my office too, I would do like 8 readings a day, which is nuts. That is
Yes.
nuts. Nobody should be doing that, but I didn't know any better. And so what I found is I needed to have a way to shut down at the end of the day. So I started getting real strict with my hours, making sure I would get done at a decent hour, not working too late. And then I would shut the office down, very ritualistic way I do it. And I would go and cook because cooking then put me in a completely different zone. Now, folks know one thing about me, I am a food person. I've got like 200 cookbooks and I love cooking. That was always the way to say, "I'm done. I'm no longer in the tarot world. I'm no longer in the psychic world. I'm nourishing my body." And a good meal after a day of working is also
Mm,
gonna ground you. So you've
mhm.
gotta eat. You've gotta
Yes.
eat. You've gotta eat when
Yes.
you're a reader because you need to get in your body.
Because otherwise, you're just kind of a space cadet.
Yeah.
Cindy asked, did we ever read people who are under the influence of alcohol? I know I have at those parties, where there's just, people drinking or corporate events or things like that. And it can be a bit of a challenge. What's your experience with that, Teresa?
It's really annoying when someone drinks. It really is. Okay, one of the things that I found is when people are drinking, whether they're the reader or the person getting the reading, it becomes very sloppy. So if you're a
Mm,
reader, you should not be doing substances, I'm sorry. Although, let me just say one thing though. If you are taking medication, okay, like anti-anxiety medication, that's a different story. That's gonna help
mhm,
you to be present. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about toking a bunch of weed or, showing up drunk. You're gonna deliver sloppy
Mm,
readings. It's not good, it's not professional. So,
mhm.
wanna say that. But reading for people who are, like, drunk or like, abusing, alcohol, they don't listen. They don't pay
Yeah.
attention. They're not with it. They don't remember a damn thing I say in the reading, and it's very hard to tap into that energy
Yeah.
because it's all over the place. I would have people sometimes show up to my office drunk as a skunk. Finally, I stopped that. I'm like, "If you're drunk, if you're drinking, you cannot get a reading here. Nope,
Yeah.
no dice." And they thought I was being a bitch because they wanted to come with wine and drink and get their reading, and it's like, this is impacting the reading. It's impacting it for me because now you're not paying attention and you're not in your body. You're not
Yeah.
in your body. So I don't like reading for
Well,
people who drink. Mm-mm.
Well, I even remember, back in the day, I don't know, I think you were at a couple parties that I had to do where we're invited to a corporate event or something like that. And, they put you next to the music speaker and you're trying to yell over it at the person right in front of you. And then they're getting it for free. So they're just sort of like, well, I don't really care, what this person's saying. This is kind of a joke or
Mhm.
whatever. So, yeah, I think the boundaries around like who you're reading for, although I think,
Mhm.
parties that just aren't out of control or crazy, they can also kind of be useful for people too. You kind of get to know all
Yeah.
sorts of people in those things.
Well, here's the thing, if you are new and you wanna go pro, you should do parties because it's gonna
Hmm.
make you faster, it's gonna make you better, you're
Hmm.
gonna learn how to manage people, and you're also gonna learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and also it's a way to network and get clients. So
Yeah.
it is good when you're starting out, unless you're really introverted like me, you might find that it's very hard for you. So, in that case, then, limit limit it, make sure that you're gonna do a party that's worth your time,
Hmm.
um, and, I don't know, parties are just rough. They're rough, but boy, they can be good for getting you business when you're just starting out.
That's so true. Yeah. You mentioned that you were raised in a psychic household. What do you
Mm.
mean by that? It was
Oh,
there other intuitive family members or?
my mother, was not a professional, by the way. My mother was very psychic, and my grandmother was very psychic, and my mother would have what she would call visions, and
Mm-hmm.
we never doubted that. Now, here's another thing I'm gonna say that may sound controversial. So my family are old farm folks, 8th grade educated, you know, and sometimes also um when you don't have, like, the education, the other thing is you have to live by your wits or you
Hmm.
have to intuit things, and so my mother had a finely developed intuition because they were really poor, she didn't have the education, but boy, was she psychic. She had signs, she was accurate, she was uncanny, it was weird, but growing up with that, it's kinda like, "Oh, grandma was the same way," and so
Yeah.
my grandmother also had visions is what they called it. And then I had another grandmother who lived with us who's super religious, and she was always praying to this saint and that saint for this miracle, that miracle. So when you grow up and you have somebody who has visions, and then you have someone else around you who's praying to the saints and doing magic,
Hmm.
it really is a different experience. And so I grew up around that, and it made me very comfortable with intuition. Intuition in our family was never ridiculed.
Yeah.
Interestingly, my, siblings, my younger brother, I always call him Uncle Rico because he's obsessed about the '80s. He thinks there was no good music after, like, the '80s. But
I know people like that too. Yeah.
oh, but Uncle Rico's a thing from Napoleon Dynamite, so if you know, you know. But he's somebody who has psychic experiences, and he brushes it off like it's not a big deal. When my
Hmm.
mother died, he was sitting in his kitchen and he called me up. He goes, "Oh my God, I was sitting there and all of a sudden I had all these silver orbs floating around me and then they went out the window." And then the older brother called and said that mom passed away. He said, "Do you think that was her spirit?" I said, "Yes, that was a sign." He goes, no, it's nothing. I was drinking." I'm like, dude, you had a sign. So it's so weird that, growing up in our household that my siblings are just not into it, I guess.
It's so interesting because I didn't know that about your family, and I'm just kind of nodding my head because my grandmother was like that.
Mhm.
She was an evangelical Christian. She would never want to admit that she was intuitive or anything. She'd be too afraid of that. but she would get visions or intuitions, and she was like a healer. Like my sister had like a rash on her hand as a baby, and
Mhm.
she prays over it and anoints the oil, and it like disappears. It was like a
Yep.
birthmark, and like, and it's just like, whoa, what's going on there? And she'd pray about things, and stuff would happen. So I think that's so interesting. And yeah, she was super intuitive, psychic,
Mhm.
sometimes even struggled with mental health because of that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, you're bringing actually something that's really, really important. When you are tuned in, and again, or you have really weak boundaries, which a lot of psychics do, it
Mm,
can lead to a lot of issues. And that's why you got to take very good care of yourself. My mother struggled with mental health.
mhm.
So she was on a lot of anxiety medication. She had panic disorder, depression. And, so that was something, also growing up with a parent who struggled with her mental health. I can understand that because I know this work sometimes would make me really depressed. Now, normally I'm happy-go-lucky. I'm like, yeah, having a good time here. But when I was reading for the public, I would have days where I would go into this really dark, dark place. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, woman, you need to do your self-care. You need to get those boundaries shored up. You need to get back in your body. So,
Mhm.
and again, it's because I think a lot of folks think the work is all like entertainment. The work is hard. And again, you're
Yeah.
dealing with human issues, you're dealing with boundary issues, you're dealing with energy.
Yeah.
And
You're
I
baking in their energy,
yeah,
really.
you're
Yeah.
baking in their energy. And so I
Yeah.
would have some times where I would be just incredibly depressed from the work, really
Mhm.
depressed. And I had to really do a lot of work around that. A lot of
Yes.
work to like not have that become my daily way of being.
I think that's just so similar too to just sensitive people, even people who aren't
Mhm.
necessarily a tarot reader or an astrologer, but those intuitive empaths that just sort of go out into the world and they feel everything at the supermarket or the restaurant, or they get that
Mhm.
social anxiety because they're just soaking up everything around them. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'm like, so sensitive. I can be hardcore when I need to, especially with business. But, I'm very sensitive, and my family always said I was like a crybaby, and a lot of sensitive people know we hate being
Mhm,
called, "Oh, you're too sensitive," which is really
mhm.
don't say that to somebody who's sensitive. But, like, for example, if I get into even, like, a tiny little tiff with my husband, it takes me 3 days to recover. 3 days to recover from it. It's like, "Oh my god, it's the end of the world," because he was mad that I left the cap off the toothpaste, you know?
I love that. 11 Priestess was curious about what our astrology signs are. So, do you want to tell her what yours is?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini,
Yes, I'm a Libra, and I got a Gemini moon, which is probably why I get along with this lady so much.
and I'm a
I
Libra rising, by the way. So
didn't know that.
yes, I've got a Scorpio moon, that's why people think I'm Scorpio, and of course, I'm a stan for Scorpios because I love Scorpios. But yeah, so
Yes.
I'm a Gemini with a Libra rising, and you're a Libra with a Gemini moon, so see, there's that connection.
Oh, I just love that. That's so cool too. I'm sure as an astrologer, you kind of notice that with relationships that people kind of hook up in or whatever, they tend to have like corresponding crisscrossing
Yes.
placements.
Yes, absolutely, and you'll notice that also in your relationships with people. Like, I love surrounding myself with air sign people.
Mm,
Like, my best friend is an Aquarius, and my son's Aquarius, but I also love fire folks because I've got no fire in my chart, which people don't
wow.
believe, but
I
because
don't.
it yeah, but surrounding when you have a missing element, it's really cool then to have people around who have an abundance of that element because it really does kind of create, like, um, what is the word? It's like they're completing part of you. So
Yes.
I love fire folks. Love them.
We had one question in the chat, and it was how to cleanse after a
Mm.
reading. You mentioned eating something, getting grounded, eating maybe something that makes you feel more in your body. Was there a process that you did, like sage or washing your hands or anything like that?
Well, I love the washing your hands thing, which, by
Hmm.
the way, I think a lot of people now are no longer washing their hands like they were during the when the height of the pandemic. I'm very
You're right.
suspicious. Like, you're
Yes.
not wearing a mask, I bet you ain't washing your hands either. Washing your hands is a really good thing to do, but what I would do is I would first of all, before I would work with clients, I would always do, like, an opening of the chakras to make sure that I was really present, and then you just close them down at the end of the day after you're done working, so that's one thing I would do. The other thing I would also do is I would always cleanse my office before I would
Mhm.
begin my work, so I'd, like, burn some incense, I'd ring a bell, or clap
The
around the
vibes be
corners.
gone spray, right?
If the vibes be gone when they used to make that, I don't know whatever happened to
Yes.
that, I love that.
I love that stuff.
Well,
Gosh.
I've got a spray called Spiritual Sidekick I use, which
Oh,
works
nice.
really great. Yeah, it's by a woman named, Barb, she has a company, I Love Love. That stuff is awesome. So
Ooh.
then, after I'm done working, I will, like, spritz that around,
Mhm.
and the other thing I like to do is cord cutting. And so you can do cord cutting on a kyanite broom. That's a crystal that I got at Free Spirit Crystals. And you visualize the cords of the people you worked with that day and you cut them with the broom. And then I rub a selenite all over just to cleanse my energy,
That is
remove that
so
negative vibe.
cool.
And let me tell you something, those crystals, a selenite wand and a kyanite broom. Kyanite to cut the
Wow.
cords and then selenite all around you, and I also will sometimes take a quartz and I'll trace a big circle around me and seal myself in with radiant light. So that's another thing that I really recommend at the end of the day.
Oh
Oh,
my god,
excuse
I
me.
love that. No, you're fine. Well, Theresa, I just want to thank you so much for coming on as my first guest. I'm hoping to have you on again, maybe in the future. We can talk about some other stuff, but I just want you to let the listeners know where can they find you and where are you kind of located now? I know your website, the
Yep,
tarotlady.com, has a ton of free tarot materials on there, like card meanings, all that.
yep.
Where do people find you generally?
The best way to connect is through the website, thetarotlady.com, and that's where they can read my blog. I blog regularly. I've got a tarot database. I've got some astrology stuff there. They can also purchase my books. My books are available online, offline, wherever books are sold. You can ask your libraries to carry the books too. That's a way to connect. And also, I'm on social media. The Instagram is where I'm the most active and I love Threads, so I do like chit-chatting over on Threads, so please, show up there. I don't spend much time on Twitter anymore or on Facebook, but I'm there too. The
Mhm.
best way to connect is actually Instagram, I would probably say. And I also have a Patreon account, and that's where I do all my main teaching. So I'm gonna be
Yeah.
teaching for a few more years, and then I'm retiring from that. So I'm telling people, "Listen, Patreon, if you wanna learn with me, I teach one-off classes here and there, but Patreon is where I do the majority of the teaching right now, and I'm gonna be closing up shop in about 5 years when I retire."
Well, I have to agree with Lou B too as well because they say that you are the best, and I think you
Ah,
absolutely are the best. You've been such an inspiration to me all these years, and such a great help too for me getting my books published and starting me on my online tarot business. And I think people,
yes.
while you're available, they have so much rich things that they can learn from you. So I do encourage all of you to check Theresa out, and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in
Yes.
today and joining us and for the really thoughtful questions too. And next month I'll have on a new guest. We'll do some announcements about that, but do check out Theresa's work and check out her books because it will bring your tarot reading skills to that next level.
Thank you so much, Elliot. Have a great
All
night,
right.
everybody.
All
Mwah.
right. Take care, all. Bye bye.